Hello everyone and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, and today I will talk about why I believe Donald Trump will 100% win the 2024 presidential election. Hit the like button and subscribe for more content just like this. And so, looking at all of the accurate pollsters, the environment that we're in, the early voting data, every single angle that you look at, Republicans have either improved or Donald Trump is leading, or the scenario is a pretty good environment for a sort of decent win for the former president. So looking at this new AtlasIntel poll, just FYI, we can actually scroll all the way down here to look at their track record, but they were actually some of the most accurate pollsters here. For example, the New York Times gives them a pretty good rating. They also got a pretty good rating back then when 538 was, controlled by Nate Silver. They got an A rating, so that is pretty interesting. They also were rated the most accurate in Nate Silver's own, scorecard. So we see there that they were the most accurate in the national level and the Democrat primaries in 2020. They were most accurate pollster in the 2022 presidential election in Brazil, as well as in Chile, as well as in the Argentinian presidential election in 2019. They were pretty accurate as well, only a 2-point error compared to all the other polls that had a ridiculously higher polling error. So that is also pretty interesting. And we see here that they were also pretty accurate in the 2022 presidential race during the primaries and the campaigning for the first round of voting, and also in the runoff as well. They've also been pretty accurate in the 2023 legislative election in Spain, and have done all sorts of elections in the United States as well as in Europe, including Africa and Asia. So they've covered a really wide variety of elections and have been fairly accurate in quite some places. And we see now that they just put up a lead for Donald Trump of 3.1% in the popular vote, which remains pretty unchanged from their last one. And this has a higher sample size, by the way, of 4,000 likely voter screening, and he's up 3.1%. So practically it's a sampling error. And you could even see here, there's about 0.5% undecideds. The 0.5% he's missing from his vote share really could be coming from that, of being a sampling error, because that's really all it is. The last lead was Trump plus 3.6, now it's 3.1. That's basically a sampling difference. That's like a sampling error. That's not even like a big deal. Now, we do see here he's on track to get 32% of the black vote here. I do think that's a little too much. I think they're probably going to understate him with white voters. I think that's going to happen because they only had him winning whites by like 7 last time. So that is pretty interesting, and he won them by about 13. So he always gets underestimated with whites, and if he gets underestimated with whites the same way he did last time, everybody's going to look stupid and he's going to win pretty easily. But looking at this, he's ahead. We also see which candidate do reject more. Harris is ahead by 2.6%. We see that actually only 1% lead for voters that say they reject Trump in the suburbs. And we see here, for example, funny enough, the biggest group that rejects Harris is actually 30 to 44, which is interesting. And funny enough, more women actually reject Harris than men reject Trump. So that is pretty interesting as well. And looking at, college degree and all other, so non-college, we see that there too. Independents reject her by quite a bit. Even more Democrats than Republicans reject Harris, which is also pretty interesting. And we see here on the issues, Donald Trump is up on immigration 12 points, China-US competition 12, conflict between Israel and Hamas 11. We see here national debt, Trump plus 6, reducing inflation, Trump plus 9, combating corruption, Trump plus 5, safeguarding democracy, Trump's up 2 points. Very interesting. And only 25% of the electorate's voting by mail, with about 35% voting early. And we've seen that about 41 million people have already basically casted their ballots already, or at least requested about 41 million. And so if that's 51% of the electorate, as it seems about right here, that's like 54. That means that turnout as of right now would still be low, but there's still a lot of time for people to go vote early. But that's also something pretty interesting to consider. And we also see here that at least a majority of Trump voters will be voting on election day. So we see here 2020 vote for president. We see that 50% of Trump's 2020 vote will be voting on election day. And here's the problem for the Democrats. People who didn't remember what happened or they didn't vote, they're voting on election day by a pretty big margin. And that looks closer to a Trump voter than it is a Biden voter who is voting plurality majority early in person, and the numbers are not even looking good for them either. So that's also really something interesting, and we see that majority of whites will be voting in person on election day. A decent amount of African American voters will be voting early. Another interesting sign there, again, Republicans going to be voting on election day, as well as a lot of independents, which is interesting because that looks closer to the Republican partisanship breakdown of voting method than Democrat. If independents were splitting Democrat, you'd probably see them looking way more similar to the Democrat splitting or the 2020 vote for president splitting in terms of how they're voting. So all these people saying, oh, the Republicans are cannibalizing their voting, or, oh, you know, Democrats are actually going to turn on election day. That doesn't actually seem very likely right now, by the way. It really does not seem likely at all. And funny enough, a majority of, or at least a plurality of 18 to 29 and 30 to 44 will actually be voting in person on election day, which is interesting. And we look at the presidential job approval, Biden's at 41%, so Trump would actually beat him by 8 points in the popular vote, because Trump in this matchup is actually, when we look here, Donald Trump is only down 1 point in favorability. He's literally at 49% favorable. Michelle's at 50. So literally, Michelle Obama would not beat Donald Trump. And Barack Obama's at 52, meaning that he'd probably win the popular vote by 2 to 3, meaning that he wouldn't even beat Donald Trump this cycle. And looking at J.D. Vance, he's at 47 now. Wall's at 46. So Vance would beat him too. And you see Joe Biden's at around 42 here. Trump's at 49. So about a 7-point win there. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at 41, but way less unfavorable. So he's more popular than Biden, which is interesting. Hillary at 32, Gavin Newsom at 27%. And we see all of the demographic crosstabs there. The biggest issue, we see half of voters consider immigration an important issue, or at least one of the greatest challenges. So we see that there too. Inflation, U.S. job marketing. Look at abortion. Abortion right now, we can see challenges to reproductive rights. Only a quarter of voters think that that's a challenge right now compared to the economy. And Trump's got really big leads on those issues. You can see all of the institutions have a negative favorability rating, with U.S. Congress having the worst favorability rating right now. So that's also something not great either. And when we look at this social polarization, this is something interesting as well, looking at all those numbers. The economy right now, according to the United States economy, minus 25. So Alan Lichtman having the job economy key true is just not correct, in my opinion. And we see here, what are your expectations regarding the U.S. economy and job market 6 months from now? And it's all positive because Donald Trump's leading in the poll. So since he's leading in the poll and the majority of the electorate's going to vote for him, that's why they see the economy doing a lot better. So that's really interesting right now. How do you agree or disagree with the following political statements? So we see here, I mean, it's just a disaster for Kamala Harris. And if this is their final, which we're pretty sure it is their final poll, they're basically screwed. And in our aggregate right now, basically I have to replace this with the original aggregate. So when we include their new electorate that got us an accurate result in 2020, he leads my average now by about 2.1%, even though he's up 3.1 in this poll. So that's pretty interesting. So that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of the Electoral College. And we even see college degree is at 44%, which is still kind of high. So if a lot more non-college voters come out, you're going to see an even more Trumpy electorate than even like a +3 national environment. And these people were very accurate. I mean, Biden plus 4.7. You can't do anything better than that. And then in the midterms, Trump plus Republicans plus 3.1, and they ended up getting a 2.9 lead. So they've been like a quarter point off from the popular vote for like the past 2 years, and they've been accurate everywhere else. And looking at this, I did this to prove a point. So this is my 2020 model for the general election, going from September 19th to October 19th, looking at the demographic model, the polling, and the national aggregate. When I look at that time frame, just to see where the election would have been, we still get Joe Biden 306 to 232, and the national aggregate was Biden plus 4.2. The final aggregate ends up being Biden plus 5.1, and he won it by 4.5 points, and we still see Biden 306 to Trump 232, and the map actually ended up getting closer to Joe Biden's margin. The polling showed Donald Trump spiking up at the end, when in reality, all the polls were just hurting to a more accurate result. In reality, Biden was the one who actually picked up votes in the last month of the general election. He was able to consolidate a little bit more support as we got to there. And so right now, this is what the AtlasIntel polling looks like when you take all of the aggregates and everything with all the crosstabs and you plug it into 538 and you have it give you an average. This is what it looks like. Trump with 313 to 225. And as of right now, I am very confident in saying Donald Trump's going to win the election, because when you look at the way the economy is, you look at the fact she skipped the Al Smith dinner. Walter Mondale was the last candidate to skip the Al Smith dinner. And look what happened to him. In 1984, he lost 49 out of 50 states when he skipped it. And he didn't lose because he skipped it, but the fact he skipped it showed there was a bad sign. In 1988, Teamsters didn't endorse the Democrat Michael Dukakis, just like this year. And we see that right now, Bush beat Michael Dukakis 426 to 112. So in years like that, you have really big landslides. Here, the economy was bad. You had an unpopular incumbent for most of the cycle. So that's also a problem too. Same thing here, bad economy, unpopular incumbent party, which is kind of what we're at right now. I mean, it's the same exact thing that we're at right now. And the problem is, if it's really going to be a 3-point win for Donald Trump in the popular vote, right now, that is a 7.5 point shift from the last election nationally. So if you were to shift every battleground state 7.1%, well, it would actually be 7.6%. If you were to shift all of these that much, you would basically get an Electoral College landslide for Donald Trump. Minnesota would flip at that point. New Mexico would get close, but I have a feeling that New Mexico's gonna trend hard. And we even see here, this is my effective toss-up map. I really think Donald Trump is getting 312 minimum. I think he's getting 312. He's winning all the swing states. Minnesota, New Mexico, Virginia, New Hampshire, Maine, and Nebraska are basically up for grabs. And you heard it here first. These are the ones that right now are up for grabs. Donald Trump is doing a rally in New Hampshire. The Virginia early voting keeps getting redder and redder and redder. New Mexico's early voting is not looking great for Democrats either. And on top of that, that has a pretty big Hispanic population. And if Donald Trump's going to gain like 25 points with Hispanics, you could see that state shift on top of Donald Trump's good white support. For example, Bush won the state by a point back in 2004, and then Obama flipped it by 15 because Bush was basically tied with Hispanics. Obama won Hispanics by like almost 50 points in 2008. So when you have that much of a shift, that's why you get a 15-point swing. And so with Donald Trump winning whites by probably 15 or 16, plus on top of that, the fact that you may even get, him pretty close with Hispanics, I actually do think he could really have a shot at winning New Mexico. I definitely think it's possible. Minnesota is on the table. I mean, you have a lot of white working class vote there. The Hennepin County results for Joe Biden in the primary were not looking good due to Israel-Palestine. So that was also a big problem. And Maine and New Hampshire have a lot of independents where Donald Trump in this Atlas poll is winning them by 9 points. He's literally winning independents by 9 points or 8 points in this poll. So he's doing very well. And when we look at Gallup, we see here that Donald Trump, all of the factors that they've polled since 1948 all indicate that the Republican candidate would win. You see Republican leaning +3. And you even see it here, like 2008, the popular vote was really close to this margin right here of about D+8. The popular vote was pretty close in 2012 to this D+4 here. 2016, it was D+2, but this shows D+3. But Hillary only won the popular vote by 2 because of third parties taking votes from her. 2020, you got D+5 and Biden won by 4.5, and now it's Trump +3. 2000, you see D+5, but you had a really high third party turnout with Ralph Nader. And in 2004, you also kind of had some third party turnout as well that really could have skewed the results as well. So that's also a really, really big issue there too. So that is pretty interesting. You see you have about 1% here that voted for the independent party. And so that's where you can kind of get that discrepancy there. And it's gotten a little bit better ever since 2008. And so things are not looking good for the Democrats. The economy is in shambles. Republicans lead by 5 points on economy and immigration, which is the most important problem. We see Republicans are favored to keep the country prosperous, as well as the economic index being -28. See, 1992, when it was -37, landslide win for the Democrat. 2008, it was -72. The Democrat won very easily. And when we look here, I mean, U.S. satisfaction's at 22%. The last time it was at 22, it was 1992, landslide for Bill Clinton. 2008, 13, it was landslide for Obama. And in 1980, it was at 19, and it was a landslide win for Ronald Reagan. So all of these Gallup indicators, which indicate a pretty big loss for, the incumbent party, are showing that Donald Trump is in the driver's seat here, and this really is his election to lose. But at this point, I would say I'm fairly comfortable with saying that Donald Trump is going to win the general election. My final forecast has yet to come out. That will literally be posted the morning of the election, but I am very confident that he's going to end up winning the general election as of right now. Make sure to hit the like button to subscribe if you want more content just like this, and I will see you guys in the next video.